Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Astros Baseball. On this episode, we're going to talk about the Astros and the Tiger series. And by we, I mean me and my special guest, one of my favorite people in the world, Hall of legendary Greg Lucas. What's up, Greg Lucas? How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, and you almost said it, but you know what? You would have been right.
What?
Texas Baseball Hall of Fame.
Texas. Well,
Yeah,
I almost said Hall of Famer, didn't
you
I?
almost did, but you thought, well, no, he's not in Cooperstown. He's not in the Astros Hall of Fame. What's he? Oh, but I am. I'm in the Texas Baseball Hall of Fame. I was honored with that back in
Yeah.
'94 during my years as a Ranger play-by-play guy. So
Wow. Well, that's awesome. So I almost said it, and then we got to
mhm.
we got to say it anyway. So that's good that we got
And
to
they
find
did.
that out about you.
Yeah.
So we'll do a little bit of news. There's nothing really uh, to talk about newsworthy, but I know we're going to talk about this at the end of the podcast. But Lance McCullers Jr.
That's
This
news.
is starting for the Astros on Sunday, and this is just amazing news. It's just he hasn't pitched since Game 2 of the 20 or Game 3 or something of the 2022 World Series. This is like a Bigfoot sighting. This is pretty exciting.
It is. It is, and I'm happy for him because it took a lot of time. At the same time, the Astros were very cautious with him. They didn't push him. Partly it makes sense because they have quite a bit of money invested in him. He's not like a $20,000 a year guy. Goodbye. No, they have a lot of money invested in him. If there was a chance for him to come back, he's still not old. They gave him every chance, and in fact, they've been very cautious with him even this spring. I mean, he was a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, and it looks like he's ready. And let's just hope that he's got his command and his stuff, and he gets off on the right foot when he gets back on the mound in the major leagues.
Yeah, I mean the first couple of outings in the minors, he kind of got lit up a little bit, but you kind of expect it. But the last few starts, I mean, I don't even think he's given up a run.
No, and you're right. You do kind of expect it. It's kind of like when you start down the spring with some of the guys who are established. They sometimes won't do as well as some of the phenoms who are trying to make the team because they're working on things. They're working on. McCullers may have been not even throwing a particular pitch in those early outings, and his fastball was still trying to gain velocity. So he was still trying to work it on arm strength. So no, you can't go by the numbers. You just have to, in those games, you go by, is he physically okay when it's over? And he
Yeah.
was with all of them.
Yeah, that's one thing he said about it, that he's excited about it, he's throwing well. He doesn't have the velocity, he doesn't have the speed, but he it's good enough. It's in the 90s still.
Mhm.
But that's pretty exciting news.
It is. I'm looking forward to what he does. And the Astros actually have potentially some deep pitchers, not only the ones that have filled in on starting here and have shown up in the rotation, but there are a few down in the minors that I know the farm system keeps getting these low grades, even though they won the World Series last year for this championship game for AAA.
Mhm.
But they do have some individual players, and some of them are pitchers. So I think the future, not only this year, is good for the pitching staff, but also down the line.
Yeah. What was that team? The Dolphins? They had the no-name defense. We have the no-name bullpen.
Pretty much, pretty much. It's guys that have less experience,
Yeah.
but they do throw hard, and generally speaking, they have pretty good command of their stuff. And that's all it takes. If you throw strikes, you throw hard, you can move it around, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they have been.
Yeah, they're not giving up too much runs, so
No.
doing a great job. So we'll go to game 1. Ronel Blanco gave up a 2-run bomb in the 3rd inning, and then Green got a solo home run. So right out of the gate, we're down 3-0.
And that's the Tigers' formula. I think if you noticed it really for all three games, they score almost all their runs on homers. They don't really sustain many rallies. And Blanco was the first guy to be victimized by that in that series. But that was all, three. And it was early enough. It gave the Astros time to come back if, in fact, their hitting is coming around a little bit. And it apparently is coming around a little bit. It paid off in game number 1.
Oh, yeah. You go to the bottom half of that inning, and Christian Walker hit one up on the train tracks
Mhm.
to make it 3-2. You go to the 6th, Altuve hit a two-run bomb. I think he hit, what do they call it? The sponsor boards or something? I can't
Oh,
remember.
yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. I forget
Yeah,
the
I just
supporters,
watched I just
community
watched
community,
that's it.
yeah, community, sponsored
Community
one,
board.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So he had a two-run homer. We took the lead, and then bottom of the 7th, we had Dubon drove in a run, Altuve and Jordan all drove in a run, 8-3, and then the Tigers scored 2 runs on another home run. So they scored 5 runs, all of them via home run.
Mhm, and that's pretty much their pattern for most of the 3 games, and so, it's not good to give up home runs, but it's probably sometimes a little bit, a single home run, one-run home run is better than getting yourself in trouble and throwing a lot of pitches and maybe only giving up 1 run in that inning, but you've also expended yourself quite a bit, and, Blanco was able to hang in there long enough, and that's all that mattered.
He ended up not having too bad of a day, 5 innings, 3 hits, and 3 runs. He had 6 strikeouts. He just gave up those 2 home runs. Okert, King, Abreu, Ort. Ort gave up 2 runs, so we talked about, he gave that up in the 8th inning, I think, but we talked about them not giving up much runs, but,
Well, he
and
had a
then
rare, instance of having command problems, and that's what got him in trouble, and that's about the only time I remember seeing him have that,
yeah.
significant a problem with it, and, that happens in this game.
Yeah, he's not gonna go perfect all the time. And then, Hader picked up save number 8. I think that home run put him in a save situation.
You're right. Well, no, not the are you talking about your game 2. He pitched in that one also, and that one he
No, I'm
didn't.
talking about game 1, they had a
Yeah,
home
game
run
1,
in the
yes,
8th inning
he did get a save in
to
that game.
make yeah, so if that wouldn't have happened, I don't even know if Hader would have pitched, but he ended up getting a save number 8.
Right, he hadn't pitched for a while, the Astros knew they also knew they had a off day coming up, which
Yeah,
is today, and, so that was, they had everybody available to work, and they used them.
yeah. Altuve went 2 for 4 and drove in 3. Pena went 2 for 4. Walker had that, 2-run bomb. Dubon drove in a couple. Cam went 1 for 4. He did a There was a I think it was when Altuve drove in them 2 runs, and he came in from first. He just made this great, break on the ball. I mean, just outstanding base running.
He is, really impressive. His talent is impressive, and I'm not saying just as a hitter necessarily because he hasn't been all that outstanding as a hitter in the 210 range, striking out, taking a lot of called third strikes, but you can learn off of that. The big thing is he's got great raw ability. He's got great speed. His instincts have taught him how to play right field rather quickly. He makes good throws. And no, I'm very impressed with him, even though he hasn't really shown as much with the bat as I think the fans and the staff would like. He's got time. He's got
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, he has some good series, but that was, he almost passed the guy getting into
Oh yeah, oh
home.
yeah, yeah. They had a that 1-2 finish at home plate. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So the Astros scored 8 runs on 10 hits. They had pretty decent 2 for 6 runners in scoring position. They only left 3 on base, so overall pretty good. Pretty good game to start the series with. 8 runs is nice.
And Detroit, don't forget, had the best record in all of the American League going into that series. So
Yeah.
the Astros actually, I think it should be noted, the last few couple weeks when the schedule got tougher, they also started playing better.
Yeah.
So they're not fading. They're basically just getting a little bit better, and they're way ahead of where they were this year at that last year at this time, and they ended up winning the division. So long season, plenty of time. There are some players that are still underperforming, but based on track record, should not. And then that's still to look forward to in the future too.
Yeah, even when they played the Angels were leading the division.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're an
Not anymore.
opposite of that, and they're the opposite of that now, but but they were leading the division. The Padres are leading their division when they played them. They're not anymore, but So
Toronto
if you
was way up there. Yeah,
yeah,
they've played some
yeah,
good solid teams, and they've done quite well. They've got a winning record against them.
yeah, I spoke about it last week or a couple weeks ago that everybody's kind of worried about the Astros, but they play good against good teams, so I wouldn't worry about it, and they proved me right, so I'll take
Well,
it.
when you watch a baseball game, and I'm guilty of this too, you can watch individual at bats or you can watch individual innings or something and get frustrated. But it's an old line, and it's true. It's a marathon, and each individual game actually is a mini marathon because you can look real bad in the first 2 or 3 innings, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then something clicks the second time you go through the order, or the other team helps you by making a mistake, and so you can't really count anything out in a game that doesn't work by a clock. You got to play 9 innings, and that's when the game's over. And until then, everyone's still got a chance, and that includes the teams that haven't been performing as well as they'd like.
So in the first in Ryan Gusto pitched game 2. Uh, there was this moment where Carpenter either got hit or he didn't. They were discussing it, and I guess they said he didn't, and then he hit a home run, so it would have been more beneficial for the Astros if it would have hit him.
Yes, that was an interesting situation. The other time, I think, the first at bat in that game was a Biggio and Altuve favorite play. First pitch, go for it, and you get a fastball in the right spot, and they homered. But it's that particular instance. Every replay tend to look like he probably did get hit, but it was interesting because AJ Hinch decided not to challenge it. Well, maybe he knew something.
Yeah,
He'd rather have
yeah.
that guy swing the bat, and it paid off.
In the top of the 5th, Torres drove in a run, and then the Astros didn't score a run. And you just spoke about this, about starting out bad, but the game's not over because it's a long marathon. They didn't even get anybody to second base in the first 5 innings, and then Walker drove in a run, Yiner drove in 2 runs, and all of a sudden we're winning.
Mm-hmm. And the same pattern almost could have happened in the third game. I know I'm jumping ahead, but they lost that game. But they were behind 7-1. They got it up to 7-4. They had runners on first and third with nobody out, and they couldn't add to it. And that was just the opposite example where they couldn't get it done,
Yeah.
and they had mounted a comeback, but they just couldn't. It was too far gone. But the fact that they're doing this a little bit is very encouraging because early in the season they just weren't doing it. They just were let's take the first 2 games of the previous series where they didn't score 2-0, 2-0.
Yeah.
And then that's what you're going to get into. And it's but then they won the third game big. So frustrating perhaps, but then you go back and look at the standings and say, hey, we're still right up here.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the key. You got to stay right up there.
So going into the 7th, we are up 3-2, and we have an RBI single, RBI triple, and another RBI single. We take a 6-2 lead, and all of those runs are with 2 outs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the good Astro teams of old always had that 2-out magic.
But some of that has to go to the pitching on the other side because let's be honest, they're making some pitches in the wrong spots. If they're making the good pitches, it's very difficult to do that. But it's also possible that they make bad pitches and you still don't hit them.
Yeah.
And that's something that was happening perhaps to the Astros a little bit too often early in the season. Or you go up to the plate guessing too much, and you end up taking a fastball right down the middle for strike 3, which to me is a major crime in the game. And it's
Yeah.
caused by anticipation or guessing, or the scouting report says he will throw me a slider here. No, you got a see ball, hit ball, even now. That's an old line, but even now you got a see ball, hit ball. That other stuff's in the back of your mind. You can't
Yeah.
really base what this pitch is going to be based on the scouting report because then you won't hit it. And that's why do you want to wait for a slider? Oh, he always says a slider. Well, you still should be looking for a fastball, and then they'll throw a fastball right down the middle and they take it.
Yeah.
So I too much over scouting and over an analysis sometimes can get in the way of guys being good hitters.
Yeah. Hader gave up a 2-run homer to Torres, who had a pretty good series, and that was the final score, though, 6-4. Augusto 4 in the 3rd innings, 4 hits and 2 runs, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. Not too shabby. He doesn't get very deep, but he's doing
Well,
okay. They're I mean,
yeah,
they're
for the
putting him in a position. Yeah,
fifth pitcher in the rotation, that's he just basically his job is to keep you in the game.
yeah,
He's not gonna lead you to victory usually because he's not gonna pitch long enough, but keep you in the game,
and he
and
did it.
that's what he did.
He did. Good job. Sosa pitched inning in 2/3. He ended up getting the win. Scott didn't allow anything. Abreu didn't allow anything, and then luckily we had a big enough lead that the 2-run homer by Hader didn't bother us. But he hasn't really given up much lately either. So it's good that he gave something up when it
He didn't
didn't
really.
really cause us to lose the game or anything.
No, he's been extremely good this year. He
Yeah.
has not been. He gave up a few home runs last year. His earned run average was a little high for a closer last year, but he still
Yeah,
had a lot of saves. And this year, it's actually very low
it
for a
is.
closer, even though that hurt him a little bit with that home run. But he's been much more solid more often than he was early last year. And man, again, he was part of the problem early last season, and that's why the Astros got themselves in such a hole.
Yeah, he has 8 saves right now, I believe.
Mhm.
Christian Walker had 2 hits. Yiner had 2 hits and drove in 3 runs. Paredes got on base 3 times. The Astros 6 runs on 10 hits, 4 for 7 with runners in scoring position, and they left 8 on base. So that was a good win. I'll take that. We already clinched the series, and we go to Game 3. And we talked about this earlier. It's kind of this is kind of something Dusty used to do, but we started blue ball,
Mhm.
and it's I mean, we like you said, we probably would have did something different if we would have lost game 2, but,
Well,
uh,
his first inning was great.
yeah,
And then the
very good,
second inning
perfect.
was not.
Yeah,
And, but I'll tell you what happened. The first inning, he was almost throwing exclusively fastballs. I mean, he wasn't throwing much else. The word gets on the bench, look for the fastball. They did. They hit it. And then of course he started to lose his command a little bit. So he got his feet wet in the major leagues. Now the other tip off is they'd won 2 games in the series, and they decide this is the game we're going to give Jordan a day off.
yeah,
And so when you start seeing that, and you start seeing some guys in the lineup that maybe aren't playing as often, or they're moving around, the manager wants to win it, and they
yeah,
still could have won it without that one grand slam home run.
yeah,
But he knows he's got to. There's you got to give guys rest. You got to give guys a chance to think, to see, and watch the game for a while. And I think Jordan needs that. He picked up a little bit, but he's still not Jordan, the hitter we remember. And maybe he needed the time off. I think, frankly, he probably needs to go play left field for a few more games because he's always seemed to hit very well when he's actually playing defense. Now he's had some great games as designated hitter, obviously
yeah,
done that mostly, but when he's a little bit of a funk, maybe stick him out in the outfield a little bit more. But
yeah,
we'll see how that goes. I just think that you've got to get him going. Right now, Diaz had a few games with hits, and you mentioned them, drove in some runs, but basically he's Maldonado at the plate. That's bad to say, hitting less than 200. But he's got to come back. And the guys that joined the team just simply have to hit up to their norms. And I think we're getting that from Izak at third base. He's pretty much up to his norm, 250 with some power. Walker's had some hits in that series, but he's still in the doldrums.
yeah,
And haven't gotten much at second base. He hasn't done much. In fact, he's been taken out a few times. I know he's had some nagging injuries that have kept Roberts out a little bit, but they need to get a little bit more from that. We need to see the right field situation, whoever it may be, hit a little bit more. Cam, 210, 212, that's not enough. That doesn't work. And the guy gave Chris Chaz some starts, and he had one really good game, and the next day strikes out 3 times. So
yeah,
that's not really the answer. DeCenzo, we'll see.
yeah,
But they've got time, and at least now they're starting to win a few more games.
yeah. So the first pitch that the Astros saw yesterday, well, JP3 hit a home run, so that's good. But like you said, second inning, Blue Ball went out there and gave up a 2-run homer, and he knew it right away when the guy hit the ball.
Well, that one, yes, that was almost through the back row of the upper deck. That was really it. That first one. Now the grand slam, not so, but that
Yeah,
that one was really it.
yeah, you could just see it. The ball, he hit it, and then he just looked down. He didn't even look back at it. But then there was a sac fly, and then a grand slam. 7 runs in the second inning by the Tigers, and we still had a chance to come back. Altuve drove in a couple, make it 7-3. Caratini had a home run to make it 7-4. But if you go back to the fifth inning, the Astros had the bases loaded, and I'm not even sure if there was any outs.
Well, they scored what, one? No, that was not the. No, they didn't. I
They
forget what
scored 2, and
they
then
got
they
two.
loaded the bases again, and they couldn't
Loaded them
score any
again.
runs.
Right, right. No, no, they.
So they could have won, even with the 7-run inning by the other team.
I think the end of the. I think the end. Of the, well, the point is they didn't. They had that could have been a big inning, and they didn't make it big enough.
Yeah,
But and the grand slam home run. It was a home run, but it was not hit that well.
yeah.
It was second or third row, high pop fly, basically to the Crawford boxes. It would have gone out. I think they mentioned on TV 3 parks, and that's it. Well, that's baseball.
That's it.
You play where you play,
Yeah.
and so that may have been an object lesson for the young pitcher too. Well, sometimes it happens, but I think that on the whole, given yesterday afternoon's game as an exception, on the whole they've been playing so much better in most games. As I said, they had a couple of 2-0 shutout losses during that stretch, but they're better, and you don't win them all anyway. And as they always say, you win 60, you lose 60, and the other 60 are what make the difference whether you win a pennant or not.
Yeah.
And so you just have to take the ones that you have a chance to win, and go start all over on the ones you don't.
I think later in the game that might have been the fifth. My notes are a little off, maybe, but they had Christian Walker up later in the game. He was going to be the tying run, so they even had the tying run up to the plate. But
yes, they did get to that point.
Yeah.
But again, that's expecting him to hit one out of the ballpark, and that's a great thing, but it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah. So Blue Ball went 4 innings, 5 hits, 7 runs, but only 2 of them were earned. There was an error in that second inning that loaded the bases, so maybe that's why.
Well, they
gave
had
up
that one wild throw. It was a tough play, I think, by Pena, and he had to throw to second to try to get a double play, and it was way wide.
Yeah.
And had they gotten the double play, it would have been they would have had time to do it, but had they gotten the double play, that's going to change the whole ball game.
It would have, yeah.
But that's baseball.
Yeah. Van Way gave us 2 scoreless innings. Okert gave us a scoreless inning, and King and Ort. Pena went 3 for 5 yesterday.
I'm liking. I'm tipping something off, but I really like the way Pena's been coming along at the plate. At the plate.
I was going to ask you. I was going to wait till this actual game so I could ask it at the end, but they moved Pena to the leadoff spot, and I think he's doing great.
Well, he is, and apparently that was a suggestion actually of none other than Altuve's, and there's a side point to that.
Yeah,
he's in the outfield now, and this goes back to a story with Craig Biggio. He's in the outfield now, and we don't think anything about it because just trotting in. That's still a long run.
Yeah,
and if he's leading off and he's having to come in all the way from left field, he doesn't have time to go through all the little things that he always does getting ready to be a leadoff hitter.
Yeah.
Batting second, he's got plenty of time. So I think that was part of it. But that running from the outfield is an interesting story because you remember when Kent was here, the Astros moved Biggio to center field. Biggio had no problem going to center field until he realized how much extra running there was from center field, not only to chase balls when they're in play, but also to come in and out between innings.
Yeah.
And he complained about that once. He said he got to the point where he actually figured out how many more extra miles he was running in a week than when he played second base. He actually had calculated that based on the steps and the distance and all that stuff. So it was affecting him his 2 years as a center fielder. But and in Altuve's case, it's being a leadoff man and having to come all the way in from left field. So I think that there was a little double meaning for that.
Yeah.
Let's get Pena's hitting better now and make him lead off, and I'll bat second. And it's worked out for the most part since they did it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I had read. So he said something about uh, the run from the outfield. He doesn't have as much time to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, what I like about Pena leading off is he's fast and he gets a lot of infield hits.
Yes, and that's a good point. I don't know how much that was part of the factor, but yes, he's fast. He's capable of stealing a base
Yeah.
with the big guys up there if he wants to, and he's been making so much more contact at the plate. I mean, his batting average is not great, but it is over this last period of days. But it's basically just a gradual. Sometimes he'll be stick a 1 for 4 in there, but the next day he'll get 2 hits, and
Yeah.
one of them will be an infield hit, and he's driven in some big runs. No, I think it's a good move. I think it's a good move, and I also tend to agree with Altuve with his commentary regarding the Astros needing to strongly consider upping his length of service here because, for one thing, that is one position I don't think they're very deep in the minor leagues with a shortstop. They
Yeah.
fortunately were when Correa left and Pena was ready to move right in, but I don't think that's a deep position down there. And while it would still be a couple of years before he would be accessible to leave, I think it's wise to kind of stem that early.
Yeah.
I think the Astros should really consider that. Everyday players, if they're still in the right age group, it's wise if they're good to keep them.
Yeah. I agree. All right. So the Astros scored 4 runs on 9 hits. They lose 2 for 10. Runners in scoring position. They left 12 on base. Definitely, like I said, grand slam, and it was still a winnable game. But you win the series, so you can't complain.
You gained a game from the point the series started, and you dropped down from 3 over to 2 over, but that's way ahead of where you were. And now you go to Chicago and get ready to sweep.
Yep.
That's my
All
prediction.
right. They're not going to sweep them.
Okay. White Sox are pretty bad.
I know they are. They're pretty bad. They're 7-23. We should sweep them, and we'll
Pitching
talk about it.
matchups too. Yeah. Who you
Uh,
got? Framber and
Framber, Hunter, and Lance McCullers Jr.
that's not bad. Now, okay, Lance, we'll see how he does
It's
it. It'll
not
be
bad at
Lance,
all.
Lance, how deep he can go. But they got
Yeah.
this bullpen we're talking about, and
Yeah.
should be fairly rested after those first 2 guys. So
Well, he's used to pitching to AAA guys, so he'll be all right. So anyway, we're going to take a small break, and then when we come back, we'll do the Ram shirts, players of the series, and our next episode, we're giving the shirt away. So if you guys want to win a shirt, you need to send your email to astrosbaseballpodcast@gmail.com, and you can win a shirt from Ram Shirts. We'll do pitcher, position player, coach rows. Then we'll look at the standings. The standings are pretty awesome in my view. And then next up, the Chicago White Sox. We already talked about that, but we're going to talk about it again. So we'll be right back. You're listening to Astros Baseball. All right, folks, we're back. Are you ready? Do you think you're ready to give your Ram Church players of the series? And we can start with pitcher. Who do you have as the pitcher of the series?
well, I'm gonna boy. There's a number of guys in the bullpen, but they're hard for me to go with unless they. No, I'm gonna go with Blanco only because he hung in there and he's basically a veteran.
Yeah.
The young kid that started yesterday, no, obviously. The day before, maybe.
That's who I went with.
It's one of those 2 starting pitchers. They weren't dominant, but they were good, and they were good enough
Yeah.
to win.
I went with Gusto.
Yeah, Gusto. I can see why you would pick Gusto. I agree. I agree that's a good choice. It had to be one of those 2 pitchers.
Yeah, Blanco went 2/3 of an inning longer, but Gusto only gave up 2 runs and he had 6 Ks. So
Yeah, well, that's
it was
pretty impressive.
close.
That was
Either
impressive.
Yeah, you could pick either one.
Bottom line, they led their teams to victory, and that's the key.
Led them to victory. That's what we like.
Hmm.
All right, position player, that's offensive player.
I'm going with Pena.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm going with Pena.
2 for 4, 1 for 3, 3 for 5. He was 6 for 12 in this series. He
Mhm.
only had 1 RBI, but he scored 4 times, and that's what you want from your leadoff man. Get
Yeah,
on base and score.
he made one error, but it was a really tough play, and that it did hurt. But in Game 3, but it was a tough play, and he made a lot of tough plays that he made. So yeah, he's my man. He's my man.
All right. And then the Coach Rose is somebody that kinda surprised you, someone that you think did well that you weren't expecting, and I'll give you mine first so you can see
Thank you.
where my mindset is. I went with Steven Okert. He had 2 appearances, 2 innings, didn't give up any runs, had a strikeout, 2 strikeouts, and he picked up a win.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Except I'm not sure that that's any already in the season. That's a tremendous surprise. He's done that. You know,
Yeah.
he's been that good. I'm trying to think of a position player that might have contributed more than we expected. And more than we expected is the hard part because so many of them, for the most part, are not
Yeah.
doing as much as we expect. Um, I'll go with Paredes. He made some great defensive plays. He had some big hits, and has been pretty steady at that position. And I'm not saying that more than we big surprise, but it's compared to early in the season, it's better than it was. So that's kind of my loose pick in that area.
Yeah, I mean, he went 3 for 9, he walked 3 times, and he had an RBI and scored 3 times, so
Yeah, he was
it's
a
not
factor
bad.
in a lot of the run scoring. Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the guys on my list that I was trying to figure out who was gonna get the player of the series, but
Now, the player I'm most concerned about right now, because he seems to have gone back into the same bad habits that he had last year, is in center field. He's striking out a lot now.
yeah,
And remember, he was hitting over 300, then all of a sudden fell off the wall. Well, this probably is a case of scouting report because
yeah,
he was not ever getting himself to 2 strikes. He was looking fastball early, and he was hitting fastball early. But now, if you look at his at bats, now, and I'm speaking of Myers, you look at his at bats now, he's not seeing many fastballs. He's seeing fastballs just off the plate that he really shouldn't swing at, and sliders and other breaking balls. The scouting report is out. Stay away from early pitch fastballs because that's what he's looking for, and he's doing a good job when he gets them. And so then he works himself into a 2 strike count, and then he gets a really high percentage of strikeouts. So that's the one guy that needs to turn himself around. Now he had a hit or two yesterday, but he before that he'd gone who knows how many games where he was just pretty hopeless. And I hope he can get that squared back away at the plate because defensively he's an outstanding center fielder. He
yeah,
covers everything, and even if there's no one else on the team that can cover center field like he can. And Chaz is a poor second, and none of the other 2 guys in the outfield have ever played center field. So it's that's a guy that I want to see get back around, turned right around.
yeah, and he's somebody I haven't even mentioned yet, so you know he didn't play that great.
No, he didn't. He had the last game. He was on base a couple times, but and with a hit or two. But he'd really dropped off. He was just his at bats were as bad as last year, and last year, he didn't hit squat. So I want to see him get that going a little bit more. I also want to see when he plays. I want to see Dubon get back to the hitting level that we saw last year. He had a couple of RBIs during this last homestand, and he had a big hit that was a key hit in one of the wins. But he isn't getting 2 hits in a game. You don't see that anymore. He's not hitting a lot of balls all that hard. And he was a much better hitter last year, and in fact his whole career, than what he's doing now. And I know it's hard when you don't play every day, but he's had enough games. He started in a row that he should be doing a little better than he is. And I want to see that,
Yeah,
and not just him on commercials.
Jake Myers was hitting 305 on April 20th,
Yeah, yeah.
and now he's hitting 250.
that fast. I mean, that's 10 days. It was pretty bad 10 days. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was a quick drop off.
Hmm.
Speaking of quick drop offs, let's look who's in fourth place in the AL West. Leading the division is Seattle. They're 18-12. They're 8-2 in their last 10. That's a lot of reason why they are, because
Hmm.
these guys they're neck and neck the whole season. They've won 4 games in a row. They are plus 23 run differential. The Astros are 16-14. They're only 2 back. They've been 1 or 2 back almost the whole year. They've lost 1 in a row, and they have a plus 13 run differential. The Oakland A's, this is one of the craziest things on here. They're 16-15. They're only 2 games back. They're 6-4 in the last 10. They are negative 28 run differential.
They
That's
lose
nuts.
big and win small, is what that means.
Yeah. And they have the same record as the Rangers, who are 3-7 in their last 10, and they're negative 9
Mm.
run
That's a
differential.
little surprising with the Rangers, only because you think Rangers and you think they have offense, don't they?
Yeah.
And it turns out not enough, or the pitching has been giving up, has been weaker than well, they didn't have a good day yesterday, for instance. So it's this will be a race. This will be a race. But I'm telling you, the Astros, uh, they are potentially good enough to really move.
Yeah.
And it starts in Chicago.
And the Angels, who were in first place for a little while until they played the Astros, they're 2-8 in their last 10. They're 12-17. They've lost 5 games in a row, negative 41 run differential, but they're only 5.5 games back. All they got to do is put a couple good series together, and they'll be right back in it.
Angels are an interesting franchise. They, of course, have always played in the shadow of the Dodgers and the history of the Dodgers, but the Dodgers will go out and spend a lot of money, and the Angels fans say, well, we got to do that. Well, they did it once. They did it with Pujols. Their center fielder makes a lot of money, but they don't necessarily spend it wisely in other areas, and they have not developed enough really good
Oh,
players
yeah.
in their system to keep them going. The pattern that has worked is actually, frankly, what the Astros do, and yet the Astros are accused by some of their fans of being too cheap. Why didn't we spend money on Bregman? Why didn't we keep this pitcher or that pitcher? Well, it's because they know what they have in their farm system based on potential,
Yeah.
and they also know that you can sign people without spending quite that much money. And they're very, very cautious regarding that, especially with pitchers. Although Bregman was not a pitcher, but
Yeah.
uh, they made some extremely good trades. I mean, the Tucker trade
Yeah.
was extremely good trade, and that's even before Cam Smith has really blossomed into much yet. But we see the raw talent, and we saw what he did in the spring.
Yeah.
And then they got the second baseman, third baseman. They brought all those people in, and they made some good. That was a very, very good move.
It
And
was.
for the Cubs, it will be a terrible move for the Cubs if A, they don't win the pennant this year, and B, they don't keep Tucker.
Yeah.
Then it's a terrible trade. But you take gambles in this sport or any sport, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. So a lot of Astro fans, oh, we messed up. Look at Kyle Tucker. He's one of the best players in the league this year, but they were in negotiations with the Cubs, and they were talking about giving him an 8-year deal, and they thought they could work something out. And Tucker comes back and says, "I want 450 million." And so the Cubs are like, "Whoa, we're not even close to that." So you pick up Cam Smith, you get Paredes, Wesneski, all for a dude. You lost a guy for a year that you weren't going to have the year after that because the guy wants 450 million.
And
He deserves it, but I mean, we're not gonna pay him, so
well,
look what we
see,
got for
you
him.
use that word deserves. I don't agree ever. I don't agree that anybody deserves anything.
Yeah,
It's what they can get. It's what somebody will pay them.
he's
Doesn't
played
mean
good
they actually
enough
are
to
worth
earn that money. That's what I mean, yeah.
not that much. That's my argument. Is that
It's a
that's the whole
lot.
point. It's he's played well enough that someone may pay it.
That's
That
right.
doesn't mean you deserve it. That
Yeah,
doesn't even mean you're worth it. It's all in comparison. It's
yeah.
all in
If a
comparison.
team is willing to pay you that much.
That's it.
Yeah,
That this doesn't mean you're worth it, but that's what you're wanting.
and that's what
That's
I
what you're
like
going to
about
get.
the Astros.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't
I
give somebody 12-year deal for $1 billion, and then the last 4 years of their deal, they're not good, and then, we haven't had to deal with that.
No, and the only player that they might down the end of his contract is Altuve, because
Yeah.
age all of a sudden sometimes it can just get you.
Yeah.
But that's only one, and they haven't done with any pitchers. I mean, okay, McCullers got a good deal, but he was still extremely young and right on top of the game, and then everything happened.
Yeah.
But the problem is that is what happens too often with pitchers. Um, they it's just the nature of the game. It's just, it's hard for a pitcher to last as long as Roger Clemens or Nolan Ryan or Warren Spahn or some of these guys. Not very many do.
Yeah.
Very few do. Certainly on this top level. And so owners are saying, I'm just not going to pay that much for a pitcher. Now, he may go off and become a great pitcher for somewhere else, but at some point, you have to replace pitchers. And so the Astros have a philosophy. We develop, and look at the roster now.
Yeah.
A lot of the people on this roster now were developed, and they may lose Framber at the end of the year. They may lose Framber at midseason if all these other young guys, like right now, we're getting close to having 6 starting pitchers
Yeah.
available, maybe 7 that could be here. So that lowers the value to the Astros of paying Framber huge dollars, but it might not someone else.
Yeah.
And the Astros could still theoretically win the division, win the pennant, if they've traded Framber at midseason because of what they got back.
Yeah.
So it's all conjecture, and it'd be nice if he would stay and he'd sign for a reasonable amount and he'd be able to pitch for 7 or 8 more years, top of his game. But odds aren't good for any
Yeah.
pitcher that will happen. So
Baseball, is not reasonable. They're
not
paying they
not when
pay
it comes with the payments. No,
they
no.
pay these people way too much.
Well, they do, and if they made, let's see, Elon Musk commissioner of baseball, that would change in a hurry. he'd bring his chainsaw.
Yeah.
Say, there will be nobody paid more than this.
So
Because
next
it's
up
making
is the Chicago White Sox. Like we said earlier, 7-23, 3-7 their last 10. They've lost 3 games in a row, so I think they just got swept. And then they're negative 32 run differential, which is not as bad as the Angels. So we've got 640. This is kind of weird though. We got 640 game on Friday. Framber Valdez, you just spoke about him. He's 1-3 with a 4.00 ERA. And I think his ERA was 250 a couple starts ago.
Yeah, well, that's making him trade bait too if he doesn't turn it around, because the Astros won't be happy, but he'll turn it around. He's too good a pitcher. He had a couple of games where he just couldn't get one or other of his pitches over, and that cut down his trickiness. And they were laying on other pitches, and then he'd throw one in the wrong part of the zone, and it would get nailed for a home run. And that's just being off just a little bit. But that happens with even the best pitchers, and he's one of them. And I think he'll get back against the White Sox. And I now I will say this: they may be the worst team in the league record wise, but they were just swept, and that's tough because it's tough to sweep a team that just got swept, because somewhere they're going to win a game. So you may be right; they may win a game. But
They
it may be fluky, or it may be a bad start for an Astro starter that just is off. The adrenaline isn't flowing, and then the White Sox hit a couple of long balls and sneak one in. But they should win no less than 2 of the 3, and I'll stick with 3.
Yeah. So one thing that could happen is usually the Astros, they'll be very good offensively, then they'll go play a bad team and they make that starting pitcher look like Cy Young. So hopefully the offense can do their job and then the pitchers won't have to be perfect. But we've got a great rotation for this.
Yes.
Cannon is 1-3 with a 4.50 ERA, so that's Framber's opponent. And then Saturday and Sunday, the games are both at 110. You got Hunter Brown, he's 4-1 with a 1.22 ERA, and he just seems like an automatic win.
Yeah, and he actually was not his last start was not one of his greatest, but he got through it and he won it, and exactly right. But that's what the good pitchers do, absolutely, with Hunter Brown.
Yeah, and his opponent is Martin or Martin, I'm not sure. He's 1-3 with a 3.24 ERA. That
Well,
looks
that's
like s
good ERA, and
yeah, he probably just doesn't get any runs for it.
that's what it sounds like.
And then Lance McCullers Jr., he looks like he's gonna be pitching against a young kid. This guy's 0-1 with a 5.00 ERA, so it's set up. I mean, I don't think you can set it up more perfectly for a sweep than this. You're playing the worst team. You have 3 good pitchers. I mean,
And I don't anticipate any of the White Sox pitchers being able to shut out the Astros. I mean, that's the last two losses were 2-0, 2-0. And I don't anticipate any of the White Sox pitchers being able to do that. Now, could they sneak in some runs and just enough? Yeah, sure, that's baseball. The best team in baseball during the course of the season loses games to the worst team in baseball, which doesn't ever happen in other sports. It doesn't happen in the NFL very rarely, and it doesn't happen even in the NBA or very rarely. The actual flat out worst team and the best team, it usually doesn't. It just doesn't happen. Baseball, it does. And because the pitchers are always different. Baseball, the beauty of it, one of them is every day is a different day because every day there's a different pitcher. And when there's a different pitcher, that means you're not putting out exactly the same team. And so we'll see. We'll see.
yeah. So looking back at the White Sox, they got swept by the A's. They lost 3 out of 4 to Boston, 2 out of 3 to Minnesota, and then 2 out of 3 to the A's again. So they've lost like 5 games to the A's recently, and then Milwaukee beat them 2 out of 2. So they got swept into 2-game series. So they're primed up to get stomped.
That also, however, points out why the A's are doing maybe uncommonly better
Yeah,
because
that's
they played
true.
the White Sox a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the
Well,
Red Sox got to play him 4 times. So that's
yeah.
I don't know how they're doing, but anyway, it's now time for final thoughts. And here's mine. Did you see this poll? And I don't even agree with this, but it said who I think it was last night or yesterday. Who's your? It's the Space City Network poll. Who's your offensive player of the month? And it was Paredes, JP3, Altuve, and Jordan. And Isak Paredes got 50% of the vote.
Well, it wouldn't have been Jordan.
No, no.
Who were the other three?
Jordan got like 4% of the
Yeah,
vote.
he wasn't a player of the month.
JP3 got 26%, and Altuve got 21. I would have
Well,
thought it was JP3.
that would have probably been who I would. Well, we already pretty much talked about that. I
Yeah,
probably would have too, but the winner was
Paredes.
Paredes. Well, at least he new guy got more votes than some of the more guys people knew. I mean,
Yeah,
Paredes has been, he's basically a 250 hitter, but he's had some big hits,
yeah.
and yeah. I don't know how they dared put Alvarez in there. He's I don't
That's
just
crazy.
because it used to be when Alvarez was in a poll, he won them all. Well,
He would.
he's going to have to hit again on a regular basis to
Yeah,
start winning them. But he will. He'll bounce back. He's in a little bit of a funk with which pitches to swing at, which pitches to take, which he to me looks like that guy does a little bit of anticipation, and if you anticipate wrong, you look pretty bad. And because he takes a lot of called third strikes too, I just hate that. But
yeah.
I see that with Walker way too much. I see it with Altuve on fastballs down the middle on a 3-2 count, and I'm thinking basic hitting. Ted Williams 101 hit for the fastball. The only guy exception of that was Hank Aaron. Believe it or not, Hank Aaron's philosophy was look for the curveball because I can always hit the fastball. Now, the point being his bat was that quick. He wasn't worried about somebody throwing. Now, he wasn't playing when they were throwing 95 plus like
Yeah.
they do now. But that was his philosophy. Williams' philosophy was always look for the fastball. And in certain counts, look for the fastball in certain spots. but look for the fastball. That's the one you got to hit. And that's what Pena did the other day when he led off with a home run. He looked for the fastball. He got it. He hit it. It was gone. And adjust backward, because I find it so silly. They say, well, this guy's got a great slider, so look for the slider. You won't hit it. The best you'll do is foul it unless he hangs one. So defend the slider, but still look for the fastball, because he's going to throw one. And that's what you got to hit. But batting lesson from an old
Hall of Famer.
Old time. Well, yeah, not for that, but
Yeah.
not for swinging a bat. But one thing I want to add. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I have been reading a lot of books about the Negro League players, and I have one that was rather interesting, because he insisted on, most of the statistics that the Negro League players had were very sketchy and not complete, and plus their league games where they played actually the level of competition in their league were like 40 or 50 a year. That's about all. Everything else was barnstorming and doing this and that. And so they're talking about Josh Gibson, because Josh Gibson's official numbers, you're saying, why is he considered such a great guy? These numbers are not, 11 home runs, led the American League, national or the National Negro League. Well, that's because it's based on a certain number of at bats. So what this guy did is he said, I'm going to prorate them based on what number of at bats he would get in a major league season. Okay, great. Now he says he's going to have 500 at bats, and he had, 50 or whatever, and he had 11 home runs. So then every thing comes out like he would have hit 72 home runs, or he would hit. But it doesn't work that way. You can't prorate those numbers, because in real baseball, every hitter has dry spells and hot spells and cold spells, and you can't just say, well. And I said, well, that's cute. I think I want to do that with my Little League and Babe Ruth League and American Legion numbers. I was really, really good. I mean, I was a 30, 40 home run guy if we'd played 160 games.
Yeah.
And that's based on prorating them, and that doesn't work that way. But that's how they were doing it with the Negro League numbers, and I thought it was humorous, because they're trying to justify how good some of these guys were, which you never can. And but all we know that there were some really talented players. We knew that. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But when you try to make numbers, it's almost like what they do with all these, XFIP. Which, by the way, do you know what the XFIP is?
No.
You notice when you watch an Astro game, every pitcher at the bottom it says XFIP. When they do at the beginning of the game, he'll have his won loss and earned run average, and what's missing is innings pitched. They don't put innings on there. So, and that's what puts everything in context. But it's got XFIP at the bottom of the box. They never explain it. I don't know what it is. I don't have the interest to look it up online to see what it represents, because it doesn't matter. But it's one of those new ones that they have snuck in. And they watch the next Astro game. When they show the starting pitcher, at the bottom thing on that box, XFIP. And it runs. It looks like an earned run average of some. It's got 2 point something or 3 point something, but they never explain what it is, and it's artificial. Why bother? But we're into the why bother artificial age with a lot of these baseball statistics.
Oh wow! Do you want to know what it means?
You do know now. You know.
Expected fielding independent pitching.
Okay, what does that mean? That's what it says.
It estimates a
Expected
pitching's
fielding.
performer similar to FIP, but with a key difference. It replaces actual home runs allowed with expected home run rate based on the league average.
So that's just home run rate?
It's just weird.
Well, it's a useless statistic. At least to be showing on the screen when that same screen does not show innings pitched.
It replaces actual home runs allowed with expected home run rate based on the league average.
XFIP?
This helps to account for some randomness of actual home runs allowed, making it more reliable indicator of a pitcher's true ability.
So they say. They say.
There you go. That's what it
just
is.
give me the real. I'm sorry. Just give me the real numbers. Give me the batting average, the on-base percentage, and the slugging percentage / line. I don't want no batting average and then just, he got OPS. No, I want to know what made it up. I want to know whether it's a lot of hits that help make that on base percentage portion of it there, or just walks. It's a combination of both, of course, for the on base percentage. But I want to know what made it up. I want that slash line: 300 batting average, 375 on base percentage, and 410 slugging. That tells me everything. But you can't rank people by that because it's three lines, and they all want to rank people.
Yeah.
Oh
So I
well.
guess I was looking at Paredes in March, the 4 games, he only hit 167, but now his average is 263 in
Oh yeah, he's
April.
raised it. He's raised it. Yeah, I was
His
250 a
average
couple
is
days ago.
252, but in April it was
Okay,
263.
okay.
And his on base percentage for April was 360.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's the old rule of thumb was if you're 100 points higher than your batting average, you have a good on base percentage. And the number that Joe Morgan used to always say was 375. If your on base percentage is 375 or above, you're doing good. Now here's a point too. Do you realize that the Houston Astros have 2 former players that had on base career percentages of over 400? One of them is a Hall of Fame, and the other one should be. The one that's in is Bagwell. The one that isn't is Lance Berkman.
Yep.
They had career on base percentages of over 400. And that is really, really good. And how did they do it? Batting average.
Yeah.
And some walks, but mostly batting average. And we downplay batting average. And I know some of them are infield hits, but they're still hits. And you can say Pena's expected batting average would be this based on how many weak hits he's had. It would be way lower.
Yeah.
They're hits.
And Berkman's a one and done.
One and done. That was the worst crime.
That's crazy.
One and done.
He was
They gotta
so
wait.
good. Was he was overlooked because he played with the Astros for a long time? Or
Well, I thought he would do better because he did make stops other places where other people vote. He made stop in St. Louis and Texas, and he was on a world champion team in St. Louis and
yeah,
even the Yankees for a while. He
I
wasn't as
couldn't
good a
believe
player.
it.
No, I couldn't either. But that's the guy that
I don't
that
remember what the percentage is that you have to get to move to the next year, but I think he only got like 10 or 12. It was real slow. It was real
yeah, it
low.
was. I don't know what I did know once, and I can't remember what it was to stay on
Probably
the
something like
ballot.
25%, maybe.
And Billy, who I don't know if you have to get that many, but Billy Wagner, for instance, and I don't know if any has tried to compute this. It is possible that he had the most total votes for the Hall of Fame than any player ever lived because it took him 10 years and he was on the
Yeah.
ballot for 10 years. And the last 2 years, he was real second. Last year, he was real close. This
Yeah.
year, he made it. And so it's possible that he had the most total votes through counting his 10 years from any guy who's ever been on the ballot. I'd like to see somebody figure that out before he
Yeah.
gets inducted.
I think I think one time you had mentioned this. I believe we were talking about Hall of Fame voting,
Mhm.
and you were saying that some writers could say to themselves, "Oh, I think this guy's like a 7-year ballot guy, or he's a 10-year. Like, I'm not going to vote for him now. Like, I think he's worthy, but I'm going to wait. Like, if you
Well,
think he's Hall of Fame worthy, just what are you waiting for? Just vote for
well,
him now."
I agree. I agree. But what's happened is the player like Wagner or some of these guys, no, they're not going to get 75% of everybody's vote. No, but it shouldn't be drastic because if there should be it should be a little more. And it was for him in the sense that it kept him on the ballot for all 10 years. But once they're in, nobody remembers whether they
Yeah.
were first ballot, second ballot. I mean, people already know who the greatest players were. And
Yeah.
not everybody in the Hall of Fame is one of the greatest players. They were among the best players.
Yeah.
But Henry Aaron and Willie Mays, we all know. And they didn't get all the votes.
Yeah.
So that
Harold
I have more.
Baines.
Yeah, I have more. I have more. Well,
I
he was a
know.
Veterans Committee guy, so
Yeah.
that's where Lance's deal's going to have to come from.
I think so too.
And but it's the big thing is you've got you know who the top guys are, and what happens is how a player does is, okay, who are the new guys eligible? Oh my goodness, that guy was a great all time. Oh, that's an all. That'll make it tougher for those other guys to get in that first year. But some years there's nobody on there that's really a superstar, and we have had years where because of that nobody got in, and yet some of those same people 3 or 4 years later did. So it doesn't really matter once you're in. You're a Hall of Famer. They're not going to say, "Hey, he's a 10-year ballot Hall of Famer." They don't do that.
And I'm sure they don't care.
No, they don't care. It's
No.
and so I I just think, and my other thing about the Hall of Fame is that you have to honor the great players, even if there were circumstances around them that are not the best. Starting with Pete Rose and then continuing with Roger Clemens and Bonds and all these people, they have paid their penance. Those guys who were really superstars, like Bonds and Clemens, they have paid their penance by not being elected yet. But there's a point where you can't keep ignoring these guys any more than the Football Hall of Fame should kick out OJ. No, you can't. He's in for football. He's not in for anything else that happened later. And and you can notate in their bio the era they played without actually directly accusing them of anything, but just notate it. And then they're in because Bonds would have been in had he never taken a drug. Clemens would have been in if he never did anything, and I don't think he did much anyway, but he did something.
Yeah.
He would have been in. Rose, everything he did as a player, he was in.
They're talking about trying to put him in now. It's like he should have did it before he passed away.
Well, no, they couldn't because he was banned for life. Now he's
I
dead.
know, but if they're going to do it, they should.
I agree.
That's how I feel.
And I think it'll be interesting to see what the alumni, the old timers committee does with him eventually, if anything. But now they legally can because he's no longer banned.
Yeah.
That's
why they're talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's no longer banned because he fulfilled his penalty. It's all ridiculous, but it's too bad. But I think that we would quit the arguing and the debating as to should Bonds be in. Bonds used stuff, no question about it. Bonds set records that he would not have set. That's absolutely true. But it's over now. It's done. Records are there. He's being credited for them. He's in. He should be in.
That's what's crazy. You credit it for him, but
shouldn't even credit it for him if you're right.
That's what I'm saying.
It should have had a big asterisk. He didn't. He hit this many home runs, but he did it while he was suspected of, or accused of, or proved of using artificial stimulants.
Yeah. The thing about that for me, what bothers me the most is when I was a kid, I've never saw Hank Aaron play. But I knew who he was. I knew who Babe Ruth was. I knew he had 714 home runs. I know that Hank Aaron broke the record and the guys came on the field and running around with him. I knew he ended up with 744. I knew who Roger Maris, I knew what he did. But I don't care anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's like, how many did he hit in a year? I don't know. How many did he hit for his career? I don't know because I don't care because that record is no longer important. So that's what bothers me about it is that he ruined something by getting those records on steroids that used to be a big deal, and now nobody cares.
And you mentioned records. That, in fact, is the big problem, the records. Had Barry Bonds just had some great seasons, 59 home runs or even 60 home runs and never beat the total or never beat the career total, this would be a whole different argument. It would be a whole different, because there were people who hit prodigious numbers of home runs during that period. That shouldn't have under their past record. Luis Gonzalez, for one, hit over 50 home runs one year. And who's the guy in Baltimore? Brady Brady, I think Anderson, is that right? Anyway, there was an outfielder all of a sudden from slap hitter to home run hitter.
Yeah.
Very suspect. But because they didn't break any records, everybody's forgotten them. They've
Yeah.
forgotten that they ever did that in a single
Yeah.
season.
I I think Bonds had what, 84?
His record, he finally, no, I think 73 is where he ended.
Oh, 73?
Yeah, 73. He hit number 70. I'll never forget that. He hit that one here.
Yeah.
And and the crowd roared and all that stuff, and it just made Durker so mad.
73, you're correct.
And they were he got so mad, Durker did. And I told him, I said, well, you're getting clobbered. Astros were getting killed. It was they weren't going to win the game. And Bonds hit his 70th, and the home fans here went nuts. And Durker, he never got over that. He just couldn't stand it. I tried to say, hey, it was a big moment, regardless of whatever. The fans here got to see him hit number 70. And he never could recognize that, it had nothing to do with the game. Game's over.
Yeah.
And he just never could stand the fact that the Houston fans, everybody standing up, cheering and standing ovation and all that stuff. And but that was the one thing I remember about number 70, because that was a milestone, but it was still not a factor in anything. But it was, I was still working during that era, and admittedly, when they had the Sosa McGuire battles, that was something.
It was.
Who's gonna win? Is somebody gonna get there first? Who's gonna?
I was at the game in the Astrodome and Mark McGuire got his. I think it was 33. I used to remember the number, but I forgot. But
well, and also the thing was if you remember, especially with McGuire, because he hit him so far. Batting practice was an event.
Yeah.
Now it worked because the visiting team always hit last, and that's when the fans were in the ballpark. They didn't get to come in. The gates weren't open when the Astros were hitting, but the visiting team at second. And when McGuire was here, the fans were already here.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to watch him hit all these upper deck shots in the third deck in the Astrodome. And it was something. It did not hurt baseball at all that year. It really, whether there was
it helped it.
Collusion. Well, whether there was collusion as to not cracking down on it and not saying you can't do this, can't do that, I don't know.
Yeah, that was an amazing year.
Yeah.
Amazing season.
So it was, but it was, the point they were trying to emphasize is what was happening was too many school kids, high school football players and everything else were getting onto that stuff. And who knows where they were getting it. And it was dangerous. And so you got to start at the top and stop it at the top, because it was the old argument. It wasn't banned by baseball. It didn't really matter. It was illegal. Stuff. If you didn't have a proper prescription, taking steroids or any of those PEDs was illegal in the nation. And the fact that baseball hadn't put a little clause in there said, and we also follow the national laws. They didn't, they didn't have to. It was illegal in the nation.
Yep.
And it was dangerous. It had to be prescribed. And so it was, that's one of the reasons the pressure from the outside caused baseball to have to crack down, because the fact that the youth was starting to use it, and they were not, go down to Mexico and get it at some pharmacy, because, you can go to Mexico and you don't have to have a prescription. You can go to a pharmacy and tell them what you want, and they'll give it to you. So anyway, it was bad, but it was, we passed that era. And now we have, unfortunately, too many pitchers that throw 95 plus, and the offenses are not as consistent as they used to be. We have no 300 hitters. We have average teams like the Astros don't hit very many home runs anymore. And at least up to now. And so we'll see. They just win.
All right, we had a chat. I don't know how long ago this guy posted it, because I didn't see it. But Steve Harden, a longtime fan of the podcast, thanks for watching here today, buddy. Shout out.
Where is
he?
Where's
He lives in
time difference.
He lives in like Asia, somewhere in Asia.
Oh, okay.
Well,
if you happen to be in South Korea, say hi to them. I was in the American Forces television network there only about 50 years ago. Things have changed.
All right, folks. So we got the Chicago White Sox this weekend, and after that, we go to Milwaukee, and it might be me and Mr. Lucas again if he's available
I get up early, so
next Thursday, same time. Maybe
I
we'll
want.
do it earlier if I get home
Yeah,
early.
oh, okay, great, great. Yeah, then I won't go to bed. So no, it's it's one of the things about getting older. You don't sleep as much,
Yeah,
at least at night.
yeah.
I don't know. I did 7 hours, but the problem is when it started. I think it started at 8 o'clock. So you know,
How do you watch Astro games?
I watched that. Well, yesterday it was a day game, no problem, and then
Yeah, yeah,
the Rockets game I just DVR'd, and then I checked my CBS Sports scoreboard with my phone. I
yeah,
said, "Oh, they're clobbering them," and that was a. And then I was watching the replay of it when we started, so that's how
yeah,
I keep up with it.
yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the day's show. We went long. We always have fun talking, so I don't know how long we could go if I didn't stop
Now
it,
that's
but
partly me because I get off on other tangents.
it's all
I don't
right.
stick to your script.
It's all right. I like it. That's what I'm saying. You're one of my favorite people to talk to. I always enjoy talking to you, but we are going to give that shirt away on Sunday's show, and then maybe next week it'll be me and the Hall of Famer once again talk about Milwaukee.
All
So
right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I should be available if
yeah.
needed.
So for
But
Mr. Lucas, I'm Rob Fontenot. Thanks for tuning in to Astros baseball, and we will see you next time.